Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle Book 12, Waybound, chapters 17 and 18. In these chapters, Lindon overdoes it and falls out of the sky, and then I had to just stop reading. I just really want to emphasize to you all that I had to stop reading right there. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. What's up, Andy? Appreciate you, bud. And I just want to let everybody know at the top of the episode that next is only chapters 19 and 20. Only 2 chapters for the next recording also. But I will say that despite being upset there were only 2 chapters, the audiobook that did add up to almost an hour, I think. So it was still quite a bit of content. I am just very, very impatient. Oh my God, y'all. Okay, so chapter 17 starts in the void. And I was so hopeful that we were going to Machiel and Osriel, but no, we're with the mad fucking king. And this dude is able to make copies of himself, which, we have seen this before. And Jake in the chat says 2 chapters you're going to go read immediately after this. Are you high? Of course I am. My God. Immediately, I'm talking, putting my earbuds in as this is converting to MP3 on my computer. But yeah, he has made a copy of himself to basically come and deal with like the flotsam. He has to engage some unsavory characters into his plan, but they aren't worth his time. And he's got an actual battle going on with Osriel, which is like the thing he's low-key been working toward this whole time, is like truly destabilizing and fucking up the Abaddon. Now, he says to all of these, they're not fiends, but they're just like, I'm going to call them the usual suspects, even though they're not usual to you or I. We'll just call them that. He is telling all of them that the Abaddon are basically broken, which like is arguable. Sorry for those of you in the chat who see my dog. He is over here. Hopefully he will sleep very soundly through the whole episode. He was at doggy daycare today, and I think he got pretty worn out. Jake says, did you read all of the extra chapters for the Kickstarter? I don't know what you're referring to, so I'm going to say no. I didn't participate in the Kickstarter. Full disclosure, because I cannot afford it. I wanted to, but by the time I looked at doing it, he was like triple what his original goal was anyway. So I was like, okay, well, really, what's the point then? So Jake says, oh boy, I guess that, Jake is glad that I didn't spoil myself on something. Yeah. The only thing that I consumed ahead of time was watching the live read that got shared on YouTube of him at the convention. And that was the only thing. And I only did that because I was advised, I believe beforehand, that it was just kind of a character moment. It wasn't really like spoiling any big plot points, which is really what you should do when you're doing a read at a convention. Just do something for the flavor. It doesn't have to be, Anyway, so this is him telling everybody that he has got it set up and that all they need to do is come on in and fuck shit up. And it's like just to add a layer of extra effort into things. Like, oh my God, you guys. I am so sad. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt myself here. I wanted to point out, y'all, that I got, and I'm trying to find it here because I put it right next to me to find it, and of course I then lost it. Jackie got, I think she did do the Kickstarter, and she sent me the badge. And I'm realizing, like, I don't think I said thank you to Jackie for this. I said thank you when she was telling me she was going to send it, but I don't think I told her I got it. Jackie, I'm so sorry. I am really annoyed because Sam ate the ribbon that it came with, which is not a big deal. I would much prefer that than this, but I just wanted to say thanks about it, and I'm excited to have it, and it's just a nice little trinket. I don't usually love like fandom trinkets because they can add up too fast, but just because Jake mentioned the Kickstarter, I remembered that I had been sent this, so I really, really want the like hardcover foiled versions of the books. Like, I mean, they look beautiful. I would love them, but they were pretty expensive. They were not as much as they should have been, if we're being honest, because he could charge a lot more. But anyway, I'm so sorry. Jan says their free chapters will release after the goal was reached. Oh, okay. Yeah, nope. Did not read those. So anyway, like I was saying, these guys are not powerful enough to really deal any damage that's like significant. Basically, what the Mad King is aiming to do here is just throw in some, just toss some obstacles in the way. It's the equivalent of like you're driving away from the scene of a crime and you just throw some like tacks in the road behind you to puncture tires. Will that make you win? No. Will they really annoy the people who are chasing you and slow them down fairly significantly and maybe just ruin their day? Yes. So this is the equivalent of you are inanimate objects to me that I'm going to chuck at their heads. And they all seem to kind of start to realize that's all they are. And I feel like they would probably, more of them would protest if things didn't go the way they do here. So there is a witch who is playing with Shadow. And I love when he says something like, "Until everyone has arrived, we wait. If I choose never to give you instructions, you will die waiting." And this woman goes, "Ooh, scary, scary. Were we not worth your full attention, my lord?" And she's really like high on herself here because she has the ability to see that he isn't fully here, that this is just a copy. A couple others have seen it also, but she seems to be the only one willing to test shit. This is fucking around and finding out. So she fucks around by being like, "Everybody, can't you see this isn't really him?" And then she draws a mustache on him with a Sharpie. No, she has Madra that she sinks into him and seems to believe that the copy of him is so weak, she will now be able to control it like a puppet. But the thing is, she is just so wrong about the power level she's up against here. So what he does is basically, like, they are protected from the void here by a protection that he has built, right? And so he's like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the void and zero in on you with it. And what the void does, and I enjoy this a whole lot, and I really wish that we got a little bit more time with the details like this. Maybe if I reread and focused on this more, I would see that it had been like delved into, and I just sort of let it wash over me because I'll do that. But I love the concept of the void as simply unmaking, constantly pulling apart. It's entropy, right? So all he has to do is zero it in on her and it unmakes her. First, she lost physical cohesion as the laws holding her body together broke down. Her body parts changed shape, twisting and bloating, other pieces shrinking into themselves until she was a hideous, half-melted mockery, difficult to recognize as having been human. There's something about that wording that I feel really, really works. You could have written it like, what was left didn't look human, or no longer looked human. But saying it difficult to recognize as having been human, there's something about that phrasing that makes it feel like he's setting up a hypothetical, and all of a sudden you imagine the scenario where you stumble across this thing and you have no idea that was ever a person, and how creepy that scenario is in particular. It's one thing to see something and be like, oh God, it doesn't even look like a person anymore, like it was, but it doesn't. This is like, she just becomes an object of nothing. Like, and I don't know, guys, that was very chilling. That phrasing just got to me. I liked it a lot. It's just, there's, you know, he's dehumanizing in like the most literal way. Although I guess she probably wasn't technically human according to the strictest senses of the word. But, second, she was broken down into a more conceptual state, infected by her own authority. This took the form of her body transforming into a nest of hands with dark strings attached. If she had stayed in this state and become a fiend, she would likely be known as the puppeteer. But she lasted less than a second before transitioning into the third state. She faded away to nothing. The entire process took less than a breath, and the Witch of Casseri screamed the entire time. It did not help her. And for those of you who have read the Dawn and Darkness, Darkness and Dawn series, the Elder, what is it called? I keep wanting to say the Elder Whispers series, but Elder Whispers is a creature in this universe. Elder Empire. These sound like the creatures that we're dealing with in those books. So, yeah, exactly. Jake is saying, Will going full Elder Empire in a Cradle book. Thank you. I wish I had seen your comment before I said Elder Whisper, but what can you do? So this moment you would really think would shut everybody up. It seems like because not everyone was here for this, this is the only reason we get somebody who's mouthing off. Folks go quiet, are just like, all right, I guess I'll just wait then. And then the Mad King says that they have fallen and they will need centuries to rebuild, and I'm not going to let them. So I'm going to give you each tasks, and you're going to do it and fuck things up for them. And one of them says, why should we? Those around him, the ones who had witnessed the king's demonstration, didn't wait to hear an answer. They pounced on the newcomer and began beating him to shut him up. And I found that to be particularly funny because, like, my instinct was just thinking, oh, okay, if you mouth off, he'll just go after you. You know, the way he did with that one witch. It's just like, sucks to be you, but has nothing to do with me. And it took me a moment to, like, really understand that they are assuming this dude, the more lip he gets, the bigger his retribution's going to be, which, like, actually is very reasonable to expect. It just didn't enter my head. So they're jumping on this guy to be like, do you want him to just, like, eliminate 100 of us right here? Because he will, and he will not care. It will just mean nothing to him. And I just don't have a great sense of self-preservation in certain ways, I guess. I also want to mention that there is a weird, like, he is bearish, but I like to think of him as a kind of werewolf creature. And the way that he came about was through, he's like, the reason that he got put into this prison, it says, he had crafted a cursed virus that would carry his condition, turning others into bestial creatures driven only by violence and hunger. That alone would not have drawn the attention of the Abaddon, except that the beast man had cast this virus into neighboring worlds. That had earned him a stay in haven. And yeah, I'm thinking werewolf, werebear, whatever. Also, his condition. It's not described as transforming them into his type of, like, species. It's passing on his condition, which is why I'm looking at it that way. It just feels like this isn't what he actually was originally. And it's making me think a little bit of the werewolf in Harry Potter that just goes around and bites kids because he's just like, everybody should be a werewolf. Fuck all y'all. So, okay. Then we go to Larian's POV. And she is not doing awesome. Like, she's holding out and really putting her work in. But she's fucked up. And I think it was Asher in the last recording that said they were having a hard time with how many times Will says coughed up blood in this book. And I said at the time, Asher, I don't think I noticed that. But now I'm getting it. And I'm really, like, mad at you, Asher, for putting this in my head because now I won't be able to unnotice it. You know how that is? I know I've done this to people with the Mage Errant books as well. Like, there's a lot of parts of Mage Errant. Those books are super good. Really, really, like, cool world building. And it's basically like What If Harry Potter, but written well. And yet, as much as, like, the writing is good because of the concepts, he reuses the same words a lot. And sometimes he'll reuse them very, very close together. And there are points at which, like, I can't help but be like, come on, man, that was literally in the previous sentence. How did you not see that? So, you know, I understand how that can happen. I tend to use the same words over and over again myself, but I really I don't think that I would have noticed these coughed up bloods because they were spaced just far enough apart. That said, I know a lot of people got annoyed at him always talking about how blue rang like a bell. And that wasn't something that bothered me in particular at all. There's a lot of things like that in Dresden Files, though. Like, he'll use the same phrases a lot. And it has kind of become a bit of a running joke. So, anyway, she is coughing up blood, which is why I brought this up. And it says, she took aim at the dragon's eye. The dread god's laughter shook the storm, and she could feel its disdainful amusement. There was nothing her arrow could do, no matter where she hit it, not as weakened as she was. Then it looked away from her. Her arrow still landed, though it skipped off the dragon's bare eye. Can I just mention how fucking disgusting it is that you can hit it in its bare eyeball and it's just pink and just like you threw a pebble at a window? Like, that is so annoying. Oh my God. I was feeling her. She hit his eye. Nice. Nothing. You know, this doesn't need to be the way you kill him, granted, but like fucking something. Put a crack in the windshield for Christ's sake. Anyway, so she tries to do destroy and push Madra out. And he is like, yeah, well, and drops some lightning on her ass. She has to block it, and it's getting tough. And finally, Lindon shows up, and he uses the hollow domain and wipes it all out. And she says, what took you so long? I want to mention right here, he held a hollow domain over her and over the entire mountain. The sphere of Madra stretched for miles, forming an umbrella against the passive striker technique of the Weeping Dragon. It would take a direct act of the Dread God to push through the domain with enough strength to hurt someone on their level. I just really want to, like... That's bonkers. Like, he is so weakened, and he is still protecting a mountain's worth of space. Like... That's just insanity. That's truly nuts. So Lindon's like, all right, cool. Thanks for holding it down for me. Sorry, I'm late. Give me my bow back. And she's like, what if I didn't? And he's like, no, for reals, I need it. Like, I do. And she's like, yeah, but what if, hear me out, I kept it and I just used it a couple more times? I can. I definitely am coughing up blood, only a little. Only a little. I got like 2 shots in me probably. Bet. I could do it. And he's like, cool. Do you have this? And he pulls out a penance arrow. And she's like, oh, shit. I do not have one of those. Her breath hitched in her chest as she beheld the arrow in his hand. It was lethal authority condensed into solid form. She'd fought heralds on death aspect paths who weren't as deadly as that weapon. And immediately is just like, whoo boy, okay. I mean, it's not going to kill him, but it's going to really make a dent. So fine. And she holds out the bow very, very slowly. And I like to imagine, it says she couldn't seem to part the weapon from her hand. I like to imagine him tugging on it and her just continuing to hold it. And she's acting like her hand is just tensed from battle. But really, it's just her heart hurts giving this weapon up. It's like somebody being like, okay, here's the $100 for my share. And you go to take the bill out of their hand and they won't let go of it. So he shoots into the sky, and as he's doing it, Larian's like, will you make me a weapon? Like, just make another one. It's not a big deal. I would just also like one. Like, the Dread God here actually would be great. He's pretty tough. I feel like he'd be good. Or you know what? If it's too much trouble, I'll take Malice's weapon. Like, you're definitely taking her down. Just give me her weapon. That's fine. I'm not being choosy. And I just love her so much. She is giving, like, Lindon energy here. As much as I understand shit's serious, and Lindon's probably just like, will you let me do my job? Lindon, this is like kind of how you are. You just didn't say it out loud. You kept it mostly to yourself. But you are just so greedy. And I'm not mad at you for it. I love you. I love you for being greedy. That's the point of the Void Sage. You're never, like, satisfied. Great. However, I need you to understand, she's just reflecting some of that back at you, bruh. That's all it is. She's being like you a little bit. And maybe you could see how everybody around her is just like, not now. She's like, points. And he's just going, oh, shut up about points. Oh, really? Her shut up about points, Lindon? Oh, that's funny. Weird. Anyway, so she tells her people to retreat. And this is when we go to the Rose Gold continent again. Yeren is still dealing with these remnants and is trying to process the energy that she has taken in. Zeal is just trying to, like, regain any of his energy. Mercy is fucking tapped out. But as soon as they all get to the same spot, everybody is like, Claudia, please send us to the Weeping Dragon. And she's like, I am not going to do that. You guys are fucked up. You do not need to be anywhere near that shit right now. Look at you. And the first person to say that is Zeal. And she's like, yeah, okay. And she looks at Yeren. Like, Yaren's going to have a different request. Have you met her? And of course, Yeren is just like, you're sending us, right? Like, yeah. And this was fascinating. She says, do you know what will happen if you lose control of those remnants? And she shows them a vision. They threw themselves eagerly into the mouth of the weeping dragon. The spiritual impact caused her to collapse and her techniques to fade. The dragon's power swelled and turned on Zeal next. While the view was too rough to tell what happened to everyone specifically, Zeal and Mercy didn't last long. Then the dragon turned its full focus onto Lindon. And she's like, that's most likely happening. And Mercy's like, okay, likely? Sure. Guaranteed? No. Would you walk into a room if you knew there was only a 30% chance it would kill you? Sure, Zeal said. What's the other 70? Yaren asked. Mercy nodded. To save someone? Of course. And I love this. First of all, we've got Zeal, the shield, who is just like, that's literally my job. So yes, definitely. Yaren being like, okay, so 30 I die. What's the rest of it? Just like, she just wants the facts. She's just trying to gather her data. She's just trying to make an informed decision. And then Mercy, she doesn't need any more facts. She's just like, if I'm saving somebody, if that's what I'm doing, duh. Sure. Clearly. And the Oracle Sage is just like, okay, fine. And they start to walk. And everybody is like, why are we walking anywhere? We could just do it here. And Claudia says, if we tried to do it here via my power, you wouldn't get there until tomorrow night. Even with all of your help, it would be like 6 hours, 5 hours. I have a portal that we could maybe use, and we are going to walk because y'all need to stop with using magic for a minute and recharge your batteries like a drop. Just a drop. And they do wind up taking some elixirs later, which I was glad was mentioned. Oh boy, I'm sorry, you guys. There's a dog outside of my door, and he's making the dog that is on this side of my door very agitated. If anybody out there listening would like a very sweet, high-energy dog, and I mean truly, if they got along, I would keep him. Just an aside, I would keep him in a heartbeat. But because they are like this with each other, I can't. He is high energy, and he is a little destructive. But he is such a sweetie and so cute that I, somebody who cares very much about my property and the aesthetic, don't care. He is that adorable. I would still keep him. I don't care. But I can't. They are at each other's throats, and I mean that very literally. Owen got bit and had to go to the hospital and get stitches because he was trying to break up the fight between the two of them. They don't fight with any other animals. They go to doggy daycare, they're fine. They go to dog parks, they're fine. It's just each other. They fucking hate each other. So anyway, I'm sorry. I just had to drop that in. Who knows who's going to hear this? I will drive Sam to you. I don't care where you live. We will figure it out. I just want him to have some place where people love him because he is the best. Like, just, I almost decided to keep him instead of Pippin, and I'm not joking at all. Anyway, okay. So she explains that this is that portal that opens like once every 10 years. And essentially what they're going to try and do is burn a bunch of treasures. Well, they're doing that already, her family. They're trying to force it open a little bit early. And what these guys can do is lend authority to try and break it open. Really, when it comes down to it, that's what it is. So all of them are so weak. Like, Yaren probably could have managed it if she weren't this exhausted. And even as she does the working that gets them part of the way there, she doesn't realize how exhausted she is until the sage stops her and is like, let somebody else try now. And then all of a sudden she's like, whoa, oh my God, I'm really dizzy. It's like, it takes a minute to hit. And it's an interesting thing that she's got this connection still with these remnants, which she can feel what they're feeling. And they're really kind of disoriented, I feel like is the best word, where they know that they should be stronger than they are because she's already consumed some of them. And Yushi is basically an overachiever. And the Sage of Calling Storms is kind of like the void in human form. He just wants to take shit apart and see what happens. Like, it's not about having a particular objective. With the Sage of Red Faith, he was destructive, but there was a very specific goal. And he was also creative, because they were two sides of the same coin. Calling Storms, there's no ultimate, like, technique that he's trying to figure out. There's nothing specific. It's just straight up, well, what happens? Let's see what just happens when you pour salt on this slug. Like, that kind of kid, you know? So they are getting, like, somewhere with it, but she stops them because they will just burn themselves out. And she can tell, even if they do burn themselves out completely, it's not going to be enough. Otherwise, she would let them do it. And it takes a few different tries. Eventually, they get it, like, in a good enough place that the Sage creates this really intricate working. She says, peace. The light in both scripted pillars stopped flickering with the chaos of lightning and became smooth. The twisting field of blue in the center smoothed out and deepened. Now, instead of a swirling mess of light, it was a tunnel into deep and endless blue. And Yaren is like, well, damn. That was actually kind of dope to watch. Why aren't you a monarch? And she explains she was so fucked up when they were in their fight against Rhaegon Shen that she had to recover before she could ever consider advancing. Her body was, like, mostly destroyed. And once she had recovered, Rhaegon Shen was not a threat, and there was no real urgency to doing it. And Yaren's like, do it now. And she says, I have been a sage without the goal of ascending for so long. It's really hard to change tracks now. Like, the longer you stay in one place without a plan of going in a certain direction, making yourself suddenly go in that direction, it just gets very, very difficult. And Mercy's like, my mom was a sage for a long time, and she's still advanced. And she's like, yeah, she intended to advance. That was her whole thing. She was super ambitious. That was the way she was, like, setting the plan out for herself. I haven't been planning to do that. And I thought that that was really interesting, the idea that, like, the longer you stay in one level of advancement, the more difficult it becomes. Because I have to assume this is going to come up for Charity. I think Charity is going to suddenly be like, you know what? Fuck all these bitches. And she's going to want to, like, grow to monarch. She had no intention of doing that. But now there's reasons. And she's like, all right, I'm going to fucking do it. And it's going to be a lot more tricky than it would be. Like, this is the first time we're hearing about this as readers, as far as I remember. And I appreciate that we're being given a reason why jumping forward to monarch for her would not be simple. I also would have just accepted that that kind of, like, leveling up is just a lot harder than everybody makes it sound. Or maybe that she wasn't provided the right tools because the Akuras cut her off, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I don't see Malice approving of her advancing, because I have to think that Malice would see her as a threat. I don't know. All this to just say, I think we're setting something up here a little bit. And I do kind of wish it had been mentioned a little bit earlier than this book, that it's hard to change courses, but it's not really a big deal. So anyway, Yaren asks her, what can you do to help us out? And she says, I'm going to tell you a few things. First thing, when I told you my body was mostly destroyed, it was a weeping dragon that did that shit to me. So I know what I am talking about here. Firstly, it is a lot smarter than you're thinking it is. It's the Wandering Titan on the outside. It's just bashing shit. Sure. But inside, it has the mind of the Silent King, and you know what that means. Yaren does not take this advice seriously. Don't underestimate your opponent was the most basic advice anyone could give. And I was like, nah, though, Yaren. That's not all she's saying. She gave you two very specific examples, and I feel like that's valuable. I know you're still. And then Claudia is like, so you know how we can like conceal the future sometimes, cloud possibilities? It can do that to us. And I'm like really good at seeing shit. And it hid things from me. And that was what almost got me killed. Like, I took what I saw as the potential future for gospel, and it did not do that. And then I just walked right into a fucking trap. And when she said that, I was like, oh, no. Because I knew, of course, if we're learning this now, that's what's about to happen. I hate this. And Yaren herself is just like, ooh, I wonder if Dross knows about that, because that feels like really bad news. And then the last thing, she's like, I know everybody's like, dragons breathe fire, but it is wild how many people seem to forget about the breathing of fire with the weeping dragon. Everybody is looking at all of its other attacks, and they forget about this basic shit. And it is a laser from the Death Star. It is impossible to block. If you get hit, you will die. There is no getting out of it. You only can dodge, and that is the best you can hope for. And Zeal is like, so is that what happened to you? And she says, no, that's what happened to Northstrider, and that's why everyone thought he was dead. And I'm super curious how direct the hit was, because she's saying you will die. He was a monarch, and he didn't. They're not monarchs, so obviously what she's saying applies to them. But, like, how did he survive? Did he... I keep thinking about the Underlord Jai, I can't remember his name, but he was the patriarch of the Jai clan, and he had that box that preserved like a fake remnant and made it look as if he was successfully killed but then survived. And I'm like, did he have some sort of treasure like that, or was he just resilient enough, you know? And then lastly, right before they're about to go through, she says, I'm going to give you my blessing. And she puts her hands in front of their faces. I love this. Gesturing vaguely like a street-side fortune teller. Yaren would have been skeptical about the performance if she couldn't feel the gentle blanket of willpower settling over them and feel the intricate working of authority. See as I do, said the Sage of 1,000 Eyes. Vision spread around Yaren like blinders had been removed from her eyes. I think this is so cool, you guys. She can give them this ability and it'll last to the end of the day. I love this. Is there something Lindon could do and give it to them till the end of the day? Like, I'm just, obviously at this point, no, but I don't know what he could do for them that could help. This is a very specific thing, granted, but it really took something out of her. She's like breathing hard and stuff. So they go on through 18. We're back with Lindon. I'm not going to go through every bit of this battle, but suffice to say, Little Blue and Orthos are basically like harrying the dragon while Lindon attempts to do deep damage. And he's also doing the consume technique, which is part of what gives him the confidence to do this insane thing later, but also what sort of gives him such arrogance that he like completely breaks himself. And I enjoy that the Weeping Dragon also does consume and is like getting back at him. I just find that to be really, really funny. So let's see. This is something I wanted to ask you guys. Now that his Madra channels ran through his physical body, that was even more painful than it had been. I freely admit the advancement and the changes that their bodies undergo, I will sometimes I only think about the change in their looks, really. You know, Yaren lost her scars. She got that red eyes and the red lock of hair. But their Madra channels are physical now. I don't remember that being a thing. And I believe, I'm not questioning him, but I just didn't recall that. And that is a wild thought. So at this point, Dross is basically like, all right, if we keep on this path, we're gonna die. However, we will take a huge chunk out of him. And I'm okay with that, if you're cool with that. And he is thinking about the ways in which they could get around what's happening. Dross is commanding Little Blue and Orthos. He'd tell them where to position and when to strike, and thus the trio would fight with perfect coordination. And they could pull power from Lindon. Little Blue's techniques were magnified by Lindon's Madra, now that she could withstand that much power, and Orthos shot Dragon's Breath that had a touch of the Void and Dragon icons. Without their bonds to him, they would have had to use all their powers to flee. But his cores were deep, and not endless. So they're starting to run out of shit. And all of a sudden, it says, let's see, it's not working. He's not changing what he does. I don't think he's reading our future at all. I think he's just hitting us with brute force. To be fair, it is working. So there is another chance for him to loose an arrow at the dragon's eye. While the arrow didn't land where Lindon intended, it did not miss. The deadly missile pierced the weeping dragon in the side of the neck and emerged from the other side almost immediately. And Lindon is like, all right, sweet. Come back to me. Come back, arrow. And it doesn't. I'm so bummed for this. I know that he's got 2 other ones. But we all know that 3 is a much more comfortable number than 2. 2, it just feels like you don't have enough. 3, you're like, okay, I'm all right. 2, no, we don't like it. This fucking dragon just grabs it and just fuck you, you're getting this back. I don't fucking think so. And just, and breaks it into a million pieces. And Lindon can sense that it is indeed gone. That's done. So this is when Dross is like, we have got to do something. If we're sending Orthos and Little Blue away, you better fucking do it. Because we're about to be completely out of time. And Lindon is just sort of stuck on the fact that he thought for sure they would be able to pull this off. And that they were wrong. And Dross is like, come on, man. You knew this shit was a long shot. You knew it was really arrogant. And we all decided to make a bet on each other. And, we are where we are. But you acted like it was a sure thing. And we knew that it wasn't a sure thing. We just didn't really want to look at that. And all of a sudden, he can feel Yaren, Mercy, and Zeal heading his way. And this is when we get the moment. Dross shows the dragon coming toward Lindon, and so he is preparing an attack, thinking that the others are not going to be its focus. But it doesn't do that. It moves back toward them. And Dross is like, wait, what the fuck? And because of this, he was giving instructions to Orthos, and the shot Orthos took didn't hit. And what the Weeping Dragon does is basically, I am imagining a huge inhale, and all of the aura in the sky goes into its mouth. And this is a real image. I love this. It's really reminding me a little bit of Moria on One Piece. And he pulls all this power, and this is what's going to be concentrated into this dragon fire technique. Dragon's breath. Pardon me. And in the first vision, because Dross is showing what he can do, Lindon saw himself lunge toward the dragon to stop the dragon's breath. The incomplete striker technique struck him head on, and Lindon was blasted from the sky. The dread god turned to Orthos and Little Blue. All of them were eaten before Yaren or the others arrived. In the second vision, Lindon clawed open the air and tried to flee. The dread god shut down his transportation and hit him anyway. In the third, Lindon flew to the side and drew away the dragon's attention. In that case, the dread god had his pick of targets. Whoever landed in his sights died. And he says, we still have options. And Dross says, not good ones. I don't like this. But apparently this is something that they had kind of talked over a little bit. So let's see. At the very least, the dread god wouldn't be targeting his friends, or that was how it was supposed to be. Oh no. He got me. Lindon had left them unprotected, and Dross hadn't seen it coming. I didn't see it, Dross said. He sounded lost. I'm sorry. Guys, this broke me. I felt so bad. Dross is so useful. And this moment, you could just feel how devastated he is to have been tricked like this. And they both did this to somebody else very recently. And all I can think is that, they all absorb the Silent King's power and become stronger. That the Silent King, like some essence of him is in that dragon, fucking cackling to himself at the fact that he can throw this back in their faces. Like, it really must be very satisfying to know that these assholes who played you got to not only play them back, but play them back in the exact same way. That is truly like a slam dunk. It sucks, but I can't even be that mad. And, they just don't have the experience to be able to tell when shit's being hidden from them. So this moment, it's just awful. And Lindon is like, I need to use that technique. And it's not something he has ever done. So that's the problem. It's just, I'm going to bust a brand new thing out in the middle of a battle. And it's not just any battle. It's a Dread God battle. Like, this is truly a Hail Mary pass. And he pulls both cores at the same time, which he constantly tries not to do. It's the whole thing of basically imagine that you just have to pee your pants. We all work very hard to not pee our pants every day so that we get to a point where we don't even think about it, and we simply don't. But what if you have to, and you have to make your body relax enough that you can do it? And it's a weird feeling. So anyway, that's me comparing pulling Madra from your cores to peeing your pants. Welcome to my show. So the arrogance and unyielding spirit of the weeping dragon was still strong, and he could feel it hanging in the air like rain. He matched that attitude with his own. Two icons formed in the sky over him, a yawning emptiness and a dark dragon. Burn, Lindon commanded himself. Everything in Lindon, his body, his spirit, his blood essence, his lifeline, began to dissolve. It all went into the technique. It was perhaps the most delicate and complex use of the sacred arts Lindon had ever performed, but it all took only a blink. In an instant, Lindon was surrounded by a strange black and white fire. This is so cool, you guys. Honestly, is this dope? I love the fact that he's black and white, that Yaren's technique is black and white. We're getting lots of black and white, and honestly, I'm here for it. I also will say, I had said that people were talking about how Little Blue rang like a bell, but I will say that for me, the overused phrase for Will White is in an instant. In an instant, really comes up a whole lot. I mean, if I searched that right now in like the Kindle, I would find many, many instances of it. So anyway, black and white fire. And he kicks off, and I'm picturing the speed and force of a meteor hitting, right? And he hits the bottom of the dragon's jaw, and it knocks it a little bit. It releases its dragon's breath, and it's trying to pull back and just basically, I'm imagining this like a laser, just arc the beam of the laser right across his friends. Sure, it was aiming for them. If it can't get that, this will still do the job plenty well. And he pulls even more. This is so crazy. He pushes up the jaw of the dragon and shoves its head upward so that the dragon's breath shoots into the sky and slices a gouge in the moon, which honestly, I just really don't even know what to say about that. It's pretty fun. I enjoy it. That's all I'm saying. So, last section from Zeal's perspective. And Zeal has a bit of a fucking moment here. Initially, when he comes through, he's just like, oh God, we're definitely going to die. This was a mistake. Like, I don't think he thinks it was a mistake, but you know. He tried to escape, and he wasn't the only one. Zeal stopped pushing through the animated lightning bolts and hostile storm the instant he felt the dread god watching them and gathering power. He commanded the air to open, but it wouldn't. Yeren tried to activate her moonlight bridge, but it only sputtered white light. Mercy used her new technique that allowed her to fade into the shadows, but darkness passed over her without taking her anywhere. They were spatially locked. So they go into defensive mode. And I really like that the remnants are part of this, and they're creating like a barrier. He's putting down scripts, and as Zeal watched the shining star of Madra gathering in the dread god's mouth, he tried to convince himself that this would be enough. He was the perfect person to stand in front of the others. He was the shield sage now. He had a path suited for defense. He was a wall that wouldn't buckle. And then its breath unleashes, and he's like, oh no. I really thought I knew how this was going to go. I was wrong. And it's so much that they almost get like completely toppled by just being near it. It doesn't hit them head on the way it was intended because Lindon smashed into it, but just this like blowback from it is enough that they can't even attack. They can't pull techniques. All of their energy has to go to not falling down and being crushed, basically. And then he feels the beam coming back down. And he's like, okay, this is it. He was able to redirect it for a second. I can't expect him to do more than that. And I know that this technique to block is going to do fucking nothing, but I can't just actually do nothing. And he has a moment of thinking about how many times he's been sure he would die. Sage of Calling Storms, and then the Mad King's arrival. Something in him snapped. He was already braced with his enforcer technique, the stone anchor, which allowed him to keep his feet, if barely. Zeal lowered his shield and shouted up into the dragon's breath. "Come on," he shouted. "Try it! Hit me!" And the breath starts to go away. And he's like, wait, did it listen to me? That can't be right. And he looks up and sees that there is something. This is really, seeing it from the outside is interesting. Lindon was a dense core of black and white power beneath the dragon's head. He hovered there, the center of a gravity so intense that he seemed more real even than the dread god. Judging from Lindon's position, Zeal could tell what had happened. He'd forced the weeping dragon's breath up and into the sky. Without him, they'd be dead. He was an awe-inspiring presence. As Lindon flew upward and moved to launch another attack against the weeping dragon, Zio prepared to witness the young man kill a second dread god. Like a vanishing candle flame, Lindon's power flickered out. It went from such an overwhelming force to nothing so quickly that it couldn't have been intentional or healthy. Then Lindon plummeted from the sky. And Zeal, I love this moment. He felt nothing but a furious will from the dread god and from himself. A ring of green runes sprang up around him, made from what Madra he'd managed to recover. Despite the burden it placed on his divine treasure, he forced out a ring of silver runes as well. Zeal launched himself toward the weeping dragon as Mercy followed a second later. Yeren had shot off on her own already, but he overtook her as he flew through the air under the influence of his scripts. Lindon had given them a chance. Now he was going to kill a dread god. And I'll tell you what, kids, I really hope he does. I really hope that after all this time, Zeal gets to take the weeping dragon down. That would be very satisfying. If he gets to do that, and Yeren gets to kill the bleeding phoenix, I mean, we're all set. That's just ideal. So, we shall see. But I am genuinely not sure. The fact that Lindon said burn and did this thing to himself, I don't know what that means for his, like, well-being. It could be a weird, like, the technique was almost like an advancement of some kind unintentionally. It could be that he did some really big damage to himself. I genuinely don't know what direction, because we are still very early on in the book. So he could have fucked himself up pretty good. And now the question is, how do we recover? Because everybody else has been spending all their time trying to catch up to him. What if now he has this massive setback? I mean, that could be it. And I don't want to see that. At the same time, you kind of want to see that. Like, you know, he's been very OP for a minute. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to have him have to take a step back. I don't know. I'm just saying, for instance. All right. So I'm going to wrap this one up. You know what I'm going to do, though? Real quick. And I'm not trying to be a bitch. I am really not. But I'm just going to go ahead in my little Kindle here and search in an instant and see. 18 matches found. I didn't think it was going to be that high. I really didn't. I thought we'd see 6 or 7. 18? That is kind of egregious. Okay. Hold on one sec. I'm just going to do coughed up blood. One sec. 5. 5 matches found. Look, the man writes very quickly. What are you going to do? You can either demand a complete variety of language, or you can demand having your need to know what happens next be satisfied. You don't get to have both almost ever. So I'm not mad at him. But that 18 matches, that's a lot. I'm just saying. Okay, guys. Thank you all again for coming. Appreciate you so much. And I hope that y'all are enjoying the coverage. Oh, and I just want to mention really, really quickly, those of you who are interested in other stuff that I'm doing and who are like me, a little bit frustrated in how social media sort of throttles the stuff you actually want to see, I'm really excited now because Patreon has started a thing where you can become a member of the community, but you don't have to pledge any money. So if you go to Patreon, there's a thing that it's basically like a menu of all the different tiers. And below that, it will be like join the community. And that is the one you want if you don't want to like pledge financially. But anything that I post for everybody to see like publicly, you will get a notification. And I really love this for like communicating more effectively because I have almost 4,000 followers on Facebook and my average view of posts I make is like 110. Lows are in the 40s. It's really absurd how pointless it is. So if I have a centralized place to put it all on Patreon, it'll be way easier to get info out there if I'm having events or what new stuff I'm covering or whatever. And I just think it's a really, really good idea. And I'm super glad that Patreon has set this up. I've been waiting for it for a little while. They announced that they were like working on it. So anyway, if you would like to be able to get like those announcements and updates and stuff like that, go to patreon.com/unspoiled, go below the menu and just join the community. And I will try really hard not to spam you. I am not like sure exactly how this works yet, but just be patient. I'm going to just try and make it like informational and helpful. And probably just do sort of like a weekly schedule of here's what's coming up mostly and let people know where they can register for certain crowdcasts and that kind of thing. All right. Thank you guys again so much. I really appreciate y'all. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.